Welcome into this Monday edition of Palmetto Sports Daily. Of course, we've got to recap all the baseball from the weekend, but it's not all great. However, we still will start out with Coastal Carolina. They managed to take their series this weekend against Georgia State 2-1. That loss came in their series closer on Sunday against Georgia State. That was an 11-5 loss. And I think it's kind of interesting, guys, when you look at the Sundays Coastal has had, it's really where they tend to struggle in the games because they haven't necessarily figured out their pitching lineup for Sundays, what works for them, what doesn't. So we tend to see a lot of guys out there on the mound just as they still try to figure out the whole plan. However, the caveat here is that Cam Fluke is expected to be back this weekend. However, according to head coach Kevin Schnall, it's unknown if he'll pitch yet, but he should be back. Also, Trace Mazan, he will return Friday, and then Scotty Doran is still questionable at the moment as he battles injury, but pitching-wise, having Cam Fluke back would make a huge difference, especially if they can shift around their Friday and Saturday plans in order to hopefully have somebody on Sunday that might be a little bit stronger just in closing out the series. But Coastal Carolina, that was their third Sunbelt loss of the year. They're 15-3 in conference play, still at the top of the standings, 28-11 overall. However, in the rankings, top 25 D1 baseball-wise, they did go from number 7 to number 9. So a little bit of a drop, not too bad. But I want to talk about Clemson baseball next. How did they do this weekend?
I feel like that's something that we keep asking every single weekend when we watch this team because it's just mind-boggling kind of what's happened to Clemson, especially in ACC play so far this season. They drop another series, their 5th out of 6 ACC series of the year, to number 9 Virginia. Now going to Charlottesville against the 9th-ranked team in the country is a pretty tall order. And Clemson, they lost game 1, they won game 2, and they were really getting close in game 3. I mean, they made a push in the 8th inning, got within 1, but they couldn't quite get over the hump, and they end up losing 5-4. And it's just, again, mind-boggling for the Tigers. I mean, a team that's had so much success over the last couple seasons, now sitting at 6-12 in the ACC. They're second to last, tied for second to last, I should say, in the conference, and they're 25-16 overall. Coach Eric Bakich said going into this weekend that this was going to be a really pivotal weekend to kind of get back on track and pick up some high-caliber ranked wins to kind of propel Clemson through the back half of conference play. But, I mean, they get one, but, you really want the series win when you go and you play a team like that and you're trying to get your season back on track, and that just did not happen. So the Tigers are back in action tomorrow in a regional rematch with USC Upstate, but they still got a lot of work to do before they, close out the end of the season if they try to make any kind of postseason push. Bronwyn?
Yeah, Clemson leaving 27 batters on base in this Virginia series. They were 4 of 27 with runners in scoring position in this series. And the question then becomes, and I'm not a baseball guru, okay, but could they possibly generate some more scoring if they bunt more? Obviously, getting the base hits not working. To leave 27 runners stranded is mind-boggling and kind of can give you a little insight as to maybe why it is going so bad for Clemson. Clemson and South Carolina, it's funny to me because whenever I came into this baseball season, I was like, you know what? I'm going to base on who's my South Carolina team based on baseball season. It was either going to be Coastal, Clemson, or South Carolina. And Coastal might have it just because they're doing so much better than everybody else, guys.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's true. I don't have good news to report out of Columbia because, a week ago we were talking about how the Gamecocks swept Missouri and, spirits were a little bit higher than they have been, but then immediately the next weekend they then get swept by Mississippi State, and it was just kind of a tough weekend across the board for this team. I mean, you look at game 2 where they lose 9-0, a shutout loss to the Bulldogs, and then you turn it over to Sunday, and it was a much better game, all things considered. I mean, they lose 4-3 in 11 innings. They really made the push to tie things up at 3 and then force those extras, but, couldn't really capitalize and figure out a way to win there. They did look a lot better, I will say that, on Sunday, but it's just not completely, where they, even know if the right thing to say is where they think they should be at this point. I'm not really sure if there's an understanding of where they should be at this point in the year, because it's just kind of a battle day in and day out. They go 1-3 last week. Their only win against Davidson, and then now they just got to keep on trucking. They're 19-22 overall, 5-13 in the SEC, and head coach or interim head coach Monty Lee's just really trying to look at the positives.
As disappointing as today was, I was really proud of the guys and how they competed in the second half of the game. We found a way to tie the ball game up in the eighth, and again, had some opportunities, put together some good at-bats, which I was strongly encouraged by, and we just came up short. And, we just got to keep fighting. That's the name of the game with this group, and I told them that. So we just, however long we wind up playing this year, we just got to show up every day and compete as hard as we can together, make it about the team, stay selfless, have a lot of fun, and compete for 9 innings every single day. And if we can do that, hopefully we'll get on the right side of this thing.
They've got Presbyterian coming to town on Tuesday, and then Kentucky is here into the weekend. So things don't get any easier for this team that's still really just trying to figure itself out. But I think that's just kind of going to be the theme for the rest of this season for the most part, Caroline.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I will say I did appreciate, listening to Monty Lee talk about, kind of what he was telling the guys throughout the game last night, just basically saying, hey, we all struggle a little bit, but if we go out and play for each other and at least try to, give some effort and compete, maybe the results will come. I mean, they did come back from being down 3-0 to send it to extras, tied at 3-3. But to his point, again, it's like, well, the effort's there, and maybe there's a little bit more excitement now that Monty's kind of captaining the ship, but the results have to come at some point. And when you're 5-13 in SEC play, I wouldn't consider those the result that this team is really looking for. I mean, still, kind of hold back half a conference play left out in front of them, but a lot of ground to make up for sure, Tegan.
Yeah, I think it's been a few years since they've really been able to do what people wanted them to. So with their struggles over the past few seasons. But Julie, I'm kind of curious for you, who's been covering them consistently, especially this season. Do you think the Gamecocks have become more predictable or less predictable under Monty Lee than they were with Paul Mainieri?
That's honestly a hard question to answer, because I feel like the sample size is still so low with Monty, and although at the same time, like, he's been here for several years, so he's been a part of these teams, but you never really know truly how much influence he had back when he was working with Paul, and now that he's running the ship. It does look a lot different culturally, I would say, and we've talked about that a good bit since he took over. But the team just still kind of looks the way it did. I think you see a little bit more gusto out of them, a little bit more will to win. And I mean, in a game like yesterday, when, you're down 3-0 and you got to power back and do something, and they were able to, they just couldn't finish it out. So I think they kind of get that sort of thing more than they did with Paul. But it's hard to not look at it and feel like they're just kind of riding off this season at this point, which I don't want to believe that to be true. There's still a lot of games to be played, and, you want to put forth your best product every day. But predictability-wise, I don't know. It's tough to say, because I feel like you can almost predict they're probably going to lose, but you don't necessarily ever know exactly in which way.
Yeah, I think that's a totally valid point, and I think that we'll kind of have to keep an eye on them. The rest of this season have to keep an eye on if Monty Lee is going to stay their guy or not.
Absolutely, and that's going to be an interesting search to follow, because I feel like there's going to be so many different ways that they can go. Obviously, you've heard everything about them targeting Kevin Schnall, whether it be directly or indirectly, and then there's going to be, other names on that list from around the country, but it's hard to consider how coaches look at this job now, because if you go back to when, Mark Kingston was fired a couple years ago, the perspective around this job was a lot different than it is now after Paul. So it's going to be really, really interesting to keep up with that. And, there probably should be a head coach named in the next couple months or so. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We're going to talk a little hoops and the Hornets season historic run through kind of really the turn of the year since the start of January has now come to an end. The Hornets went down to Orlando to play in a play-in game, trying to get to their first NBA playoff appearance in 10 seasons, would be the first since 2016. They were fighting for that number 8 seed, the last spot in the East. But things did not go exactly according to plan for Charlotte. They ended up losing 121-90, and it was just not a pretty scene. I mean, they had 14 turnovers, which was more than they had made field goals. They had 13 field goals in the first half. They only had 37 points at halftime, which was their second lowest halftime score of the season. They had 16 points in the first quarter. This is a team that usually scores the basketball pretty well. They kind of live and die by the three. They shot 27% from three. Con Knipple was 1 of 6 from behind the arc. They shot 34% from the floor. I mean, it just felt like the bucket had a lid on it on Charlotte's end of things, and it felt like everything was going in for the Magic. The Magic were really just playing bully ball out there. I mean, they were picking up fouls left and right. It's a team that plays really well, has a lot of productivity in the paint, and that's exactly what they did, was they just bullied Charlotte on their way to get a win. And I guess, Charlotte can be feeling okay because the Magic went up to Detroit last night and beat the 1-seeded Pistons in Game 1, stole a game on their home floor. So that team is kind of looking the way that everybody thought it was going to before the season started. Paolo Banchero was a force to be reckoned with. But before we kind of talk about what's next, let's just kind of talk about what went wrong on Friday night. Bronwyn, what did you see from this Hornets group? I mean, it was kind of the opposite of everything that we saw over the last few games, where they've been blowing people out left and right, and then all of a sudden they themselves get blown out.
Yeah, something that's interesting to me is Con Knipple with the Rookie of the Year conversation. Now, I did a little bit of research, as I do, okay, and this is wild. He went 2 for 12, from the field, 6 points in the win over the Heat, and then 3 for 10, 11 points in the loss to Orlando. And usually play-in games don't factor into the voting for Rookie of the Year. But that deadline for voting was extended because of Luka Doncic and Cade Cunningham applied for extenuating circumstances. They got those, okay? The voting deadline moves from April 12th to April 17th. And this is a wild stat. Knipple had a 6-2 lead in first place votes before the end of Tuesday, according to a voting tracker, before that play-in game. And then Flag afterwards goes up and has a 13-12 lead. So my question to you ladies is, did Con Knipple outplay himself out of a Rookie of the Year place?
I mean, personally, I don't think so, because the play-in is only, 2 games that they had out of a full sample size of an entire season. And I mean, Con's season has been ridiculous. I mean, he's one of only 3 rookies, including Paul Pierce and Larry Bird, to average 15 points, 5 rebounds, and over 40% shooting from 3 over the course of the year. I mean, he led the league and made 3-pointers all season with 273 of them. I mean, he's got some pretty elite company. I mean, I think Rick and I argued about this a couple months back because Rick wants Cooper Flagg to be the Rookie of the Year, but I was like, I think Con's making his own case. I mean, just from the value that he adds to the team as well, and he's just had a really stellar season in my opinion, so I don't know if the play-in should really knock him down any notches. I mean, he is one of the 3 finalists along with Cooper Flagg and then VJ Edgecombe out of Philly, so I don't think that knocks him down. Tegan, I don't know what your thought is on Con's odds there.
Yeah, I don't think that knocks him out of it either. The voters are looking at the season as a whole. You look at what he was able to do in his rookie year. I think what happened during the majority of the season is really going to outweigh the 2 games that the voters might say, hey, these weren't his best. But I think the overall season is going to be the real impactful part of their voting there, Julia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like we're always dealing with this when it comes to voting for things of this nature, of recency bias. I mean, 2 games don't impact your entire season. So I think it's really important to, remember when you're doing these things, you have to look at their full slate and the entire body of work. So yeah, I wouldn't hold those 2 against him.
Yeah, maybe that game on Friday not going the way that Khan wanted it to, not going the way that the Hornets wanted it to. But remember, guys, they're bringing a lot of these guys back. They have one of the youngest rosters in the league with LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Con Knipple kind of at the core of this thing. And even though things didn't go the way they wanted it to, they kind of got themselves in a hole they couldn't get out of. These guys are already pumped. I mean, if you listen to their exit interviews from Saturday, it sounded like they just could not wait to get back out there and that the fall cannot come soon enough.
Fired up. Fired up and fueled to get better as a coach, as a leader. Fired up and fueled up for our team to just want to work even harder this summer. If you're not the last team standing, what you did might have been good, but not good enough.
I believe we're a dangerous team. We have a lot of pieces, that can, of course, create. But we also have a lot of pieces that do, the small things.
That's my boy B Mills right there.
Hey now, roll tide. But yes, even though things didn't go the way the Hornets wanted it to, I mean, you can tell that they are pumped to just get back out there. Their playoff drought is the longest in the league. It now extends to 10 seasons. But this is the closest to that spot that this team has been in a very, very long time. So a lot of things to build off of. One thing Coach Charles Lee said was that the narrative has changed, but that means the expectations have also changed. So we'll see how they kind of handle that throughout the offseason. And we are also going to take a quick break here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll be right back with y'all in a few minutes.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. All right, guys, the NFL Draft is this week. It starts on Thursday in Pittsburgh, so really exciting things to look forward to there. We'll be sprinkling some stuff throughout our shows this week in preparation for that. But, of course, this weekend, a really big trade that kind of shook up the draft order for this year. Dexter Lawrence, the former New York Giant and the former Clemson Tiger, is now a Cincinnati Bengal. He gets traded to the Bengals, and he signs a contract extension worth $28 million, and now that is through the 2028 season. So he's played 7 years in the NFL so far. This fall will be his 8th. Just a really big trade because now the Giants possess the 5th and the 10th pick in the draft here, and I don't know what you guys have seen, but I feel like there's not as much excitement about this year's draft class as there has been in different years. So obviously a little bit of urgency to be within those top 10 picks and, get those few players that these teams really have their sights set on. But, the Bengals, maybe they were feeling at number 10. They didn't feel like they could get a good piece of the defense that they need. Of course, I looked up at some of their stats from last year. I feel like I knew this, but getting reminded of it, they ranked at least 24th or worse in every major defensive category last year, including very last in rushing defense. So they really needed a guy to kind of spearhead their defense and get things going because, there's only so much that Joe Burrow can do on the other side of things. So what do you guys think of this trade, and how does this really shake up the draft order for you?
I mean, I feel like it's really a win-win for both sides. It's kind of crazy to see those kind of numbers for, an interior defensive guy. But I mean, the Bengals needed that kind of presence. They get Dexter Lawrence. And then the Giants are trying to build on kind of this young core that they got rolling last season with Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo and whoever else. So having 2 top 10 picks is a big deal for them. And remember, the Giants also have a very early second-round pick. And in some of the mock drafts that I'm seeing, they're trying to take another interior defensive lineman in that spot. And Clemson, another Tiger, defensive tackle Peter Woods is somebody that's being projected as going to New York in that early second-round pick in a couple of the boards I've seen. So who knows? Maybe they end up going for Woods at that number 10 spot now that they have an extra first-round pick. I don't know. That kind of, seems like a high spot for Woods to go, but definitely something to keep an eye on for the other Tigers. Maybe Dexter was thinking about that when he got the extra pick for the Giants. I don't know, Bronwyn. What do you think?
Well, number one, I think anything the Bengals can do to help them win is needed. I mean, if they need to wear chicken bones around their neck every time they play, they need to do it. It's getting really sad at this point. R.I.P. Joe Burrow's career, I feel, at this point. Some interesting stats here, though. He was double-teamed more than any other defensive tackle since 2024. and his 2024 double team rate was the highest at the position since 2018. His 108 pressures against QB since 2022 leads the position, and the second place in that position is Vita Vea, who only has 32. He is a stalwart for any defensive line, and I think it's a good move. Like I said, I mean, the Bengals need it, guys. They need it desperately, desperately. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to be back with more on Palmetto Sports Daily.
Well, howdy one more time from Palmetto Sports Daily. Before we giddy up on out of here, I'm so sorry, guys. I just had to do that. We have to send a big congratulations to the South Carolina equestrian team. They brought home a 4th national championship in program history over the weekend, taking down Texas A&M, and it was an upset performance. South Carolina had a really big lead, and A&M kind of clawed their way back, and it came down to a tiebreaker that ultimately ruled in South Carolina's favor. So really exciting to see the Gamecocks bring home another national championship. And, I saw some people online wondering if the horses can suit up and play football. So I guess we'll just have to see for this fall.
Oh, no.
Or basketball, or baseball.
Get them on that offensive line.
Just keep it going.
Literally any sport. Any sport except for women's basketball. Put them out there. Also, fun story this morning, Julia. Tell us about how your day started.
Oh my gosh. Quickly, before we run out of time, my freezer would not stop spitting out ice all over my floor. I almost couldn't even be on the show today. I had to abandon the maintenance man in my house, so I hope he fixed it. And, we'll see. He told me to not work too hard, but I always got to work hard, guys. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll see you tomorrow.